Rightio, let's swing into Wellington Phoenix mode where I don't know what else to say about the Wellington Phoenix women, respectfully. I don't think they're bad. They're just not very good away from home. So they had a loss away from home against Melbourne City FC 2-1. So they did score a goal. Shout out to them. And now they return to the greatest football stadium in Aotearoa, Porirua Park, where they are going to face Canberra United. Let me check what's Canberra United's up to. They are worse than the Wellington Phoenix women. So not only are the Wellington Phoenix women returning to Aotearoa to play at Porirua Park, where the local motorcycle gangs will be having a field day be in celebration of the Wellington Phoenix women, they're also playing a weaker team. So I love that. So just before I was about to start yarning about the Wellington Phoenix, I was a bit like, Wellington Phoenix woman lost away, who cares, keep it moving. But forecasting forward to this weekend, this game will be played Sunday, 5 p.m, prime time. I'm excited already. So shout out to the Wellington Phoenix women. How about that? The Wellington Phoenix men had a gritty 1-1 draw with Melbourne Victory, went down to 10 men. T-Pain, he got the red card. He auto-tuned his way off the field. Wellington Phoenix concede the goal, but then win a penalty. And another one of our favorite athletes, not Winton Rufer, sorry.
Did a good impersonation of Winton Rufer, though, with his goal scoring lately.
Yeah.
Back-to-back games.
Respect to Winton Rufer, but I prefer Alex Rufer, midfielder extraordinaire. He slotted home the pen, which was good to see. You can kind of take this discussion wherever you want to go. Obviously, there's an exciting Wellington Phoenix woman fixture coming up that you might want to touch on. But the one thing I will say about the Wellington Phoenix men, the dude who was playing on the right flank, I think he came off the bench and won the penalty.
Oscar Van Hatten.
He looked lively. And here's another one of these youngsters. It's, again, the similarities with the Warriors are endless, because it's like, okay, Sifakula makes his debut, looks good. Leotawa makes his debut, looks good. Tain Tuapiki makes his debut, looks good. Keilani Going makes his debut, looks good. Every one of these Wellington Phoenix youngsters coming off the bench, making their debuts or starting a game in the case of Lucas Kelly-Heald, they all look good. They all look like really good footballers. We've seen like Ben Old's been instrumental in some good footy as well. And I do not want to overlook the fact that Oscar Van Hatten was very lively in the lead up to his earning of the penalty, and then winning the penalty basically off of effort. Like, he just put himself in the frame. Defender came in with a staunch challenge inside the box, and he wins the penalty. So shout out to the Wellington Phoenix men for staying in that contest, gritting through some adversity. And then Oscar Van Hatten, I thought, was pretty lively coming off the bench.
He was, and he has been in a couple games recently. He got an assist in one game a couple of weeks ago. I can't remember which one it was, but that was his first goal contribution in the A-League. And he has been around the first team for about probably 2 seasons prior to this. And he's someone who didn't shine. Like, he looked like one of the better players, but he didn't stand out in the way that Ben Old or Sam Sutton did at reserve level. So he was someone who was, I don't know, maybe he just needed a bit more adjustment. I think he's bulked up. I think also he's found a bit more of a wide position these days, which is getting back to maybe what he did a little more in the reserves too. But he's a player who didn't really look like he was going to hang around long term previously, but he's shown some bright little sparks recently, and that's what you want to see from young players. Is development, it's growing, it's above all, it's like, because I think people, it's probably an American thing to be fair, but when it comes to like scouting younger players, I think a lot of people get caught up in like attributes and what do they do, how's their touch, do they have a good shot cross? What do they do in these situations? I try to keep a broader mind on those things and just think, how much do they contribute? Like whether it's textbook contributions or whether it's just stuff that you can't explain and maybe he's just a bit lucky, but are they getting into positions to make things happen? And he didn't for a while, and now recently he has been, and it just feels like another example of a player who's improving under the current coach and the current regime. And yeah, what more can you ask from the young players than to improve and just give the team a little bit something in those situations? I personally think it was a travesty of a decision. Like I can't figure out why exactly that was a penalty, other than the idea of like the VAR. Once it's gone to VAR, they basically just look for contact, and it's like, well, did the defender touch the striker? Yeah. Okay, well, we'll ignore the fact that the striker's touch was going out for a goal kick. He wasn't going to retain it. The defender has a right to challenge for the ball, and he didn't like kick it. If anything, Van Hadden kicked him with the dangling leg, whatever, that kind of stuff. But I also happen to feel that the Phoenix should have had what I thought was a stonewall penalty in the first half when Kraev gets like a hand on his shoulder and dragged backwards, and they didn't call that. I thought the Payne red card was fair enough. I also thought the Phoenix caught a break, even though it was technically the exactly correct decision. That offside goal that was disallowed where the dude's toe was dangling behind Paulson, it's like, yeah, technically that's correct, and you have to make that decision to the letter of the law, but that's a massive fluke that the Phoenix got away with that. That is a massive fluke. It was also a bit of a fluke, the goal that Victory scored, though, because the dude just slams an off-target shot that hits one of his teammates and deflects into the goal without anyone understanding what was going on. So there was a weird game in which a lot of these weird little moments added up. But at the end of the day, what you see is the Phoenix team that probably got bossed for long stretches of that game by the Victory for the second time this season. That's happened, because you remember they also played the Victory away earlier in the season. That was the game where they famously had 0 shots and came away with a 1-1 draw. Well, they had more than 0 shots today, and today on Friday, Saturday, whichever one it was. Better attacking performance there at home, but also still definitely the team on the back foot for the majority of it, and also still came away with a battling 1-1 draw. And I think for a lot of Victory's dominance of the ball and playing in and around that Phoenix penalty area, didn't create a lot of chances. Like they didn't have it's not like they were missing sitters, and that's why the game was left open and vulnerable for the Phoenix to get a late penalty and tie things up. It was because the Phoenix, weren't able to control possession particularly well in this game, but were at least able to defend their penalty area very well and get bodies in front of the ball and not allow clear shots. And Paulson did what he had to do. Wooden and Sermon did what they had to do. They played great in this game. Like it's a good battling performance that shows a team that knows how to grind it out. And that's probably what you'd say is lacking from the women's team in these 6 consecutive away defeats, all of them by a single goal. Like when you're losing by a single goal every single time, you're not getting dominated. You're not getting played off the park. You're there or there. You might not be necessarily the better team, but the Phoenix have just shown, once again, the second time this season, again, the men's Phoenix have just shown against Melbourne Victory for the second time this season, you don't have to be the better team to get a result. Even just scraping away draws in some of these away games would have, it's tallying up points. It's keeping themselves pushing towards the AL Dub playoffs, and haven't quite been able to do that. But as you say, they are at home against Canberra this weekend. Canberra, who do score a lot of goals, and they also concede a lot of goals. So it might be the best kind of team to play at the moment. And realistically, like off the back of a 5-game away losing streak, going away then for another time, 4 games in Australia in a row, I think, because the one home game they're supposed to have was Unite round, so they had to go play it in Sydney anyway. Melbourne City wasn't a great side to be meeting at the end of that streak. Like, here's the best team in the league coming off an unexpected defeat last week. Well, they're not going to have 2 off days in a row. They're obviously going to bounce back from that and be kind of recalibrated for the challenge. And they were pretty good in that game. Should have won by more. They left the door open. Mariana Speckmeyer scores a good goal. Gives the Phoenix a chance late on. Didn't quite have enough in them, but I actually thought it was a solid defensive performance for most of that game, and there was a bit more of that grittiness, and maybe it helped that they were playing against a team where they knew they were going to be second best, and so you just simplify the game plan and be a little bit more conservative with things. Maybe that helped them a bit. But yeah, they're not yet at the stage where they've figured out how to grind out results like the men have. But the fact that the men have is why they it's hard not to think of them. They've stayed first place with this result. It's hard not to think of them as title contenders if this carries on. Although before we get to that point, let's maybe just try to win the first playoff game for a decade, because that hasn't happened for a long time.